welcome to the final game of not just the week, but of the season. Up this time is a game called Dogurai. That is a portmanteau of dog and samurai, because, well, you are playing as Bones, a samurai dog. Like,
Disclaimer: this is Samurai for a value of Samurai that includes an awful lot of ninja trappings.
uh-huh. I'm like, yeah, so this is a bit of a weird one in terms of retro gaming because, well,
This is extremely Game Boyish.
Yeah, and that's not an aesthetical value that gets emulated a lot.
Yeah, because there's a lot about it that a lot of people don't actually particularly like.
Right.
I mean, the first level is literally in Game Boy terrible friggin'
You can
green.
make the whole game
color.
Game Boy green if you want.
Right, but who would want to do that?
Masochists?
Yeah. Here's the thing. Nobody
on this lava level, it's much clearer that they are in fact actually sticking to just four colors.
Yeah.
You got black, you got white, you got red, and you got yellow.
Mm-hmm. And the Game Boy's colors were, well, 4 shades of gray.
Yes. 4 shades of gray on a green screen. And then the Pocket had an actual gray screen.
Yeah. I mean, I guess technically this is aping Super Game Boy aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, like...
how did you get into this menu?
Start.
Yeah. Or is this on the PlayStation?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, the PC one, I didn't see that. The PC one opened in literally a 4 times pixel perfect frame.
Right. But yeah, this game is aiming to like ape Game Boy gaming of the early 90s. The thing of it is, while it's got the aesthetics down, I don't think I would have been able to have played a game like Dogurai on the actual Game Boy here. It's too fluid.
Yeah, it's very fluid and sharp, which are not things that the original Game Boy was great at.
No, it's like I'm looking at this game and there would have been ghosting for days.
You would have went blind with the ghosting.
Possibly. Like, it's kind of hard to convey if you've never actually experienced a game, like, you know, the original thick brick Game Boy.
Actually, if you see Naka's recent video of Link's Awakening, the first video does have some Game Boy ghosting.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it doesn't have that. And I am completely fine with that because it means it doesn't have the shitty parts of the Game Boy look to it.
Yeah, the worst you get here is a little bit of the semi-awkward, can't quite tell where the edge of a black object on a black part of the background is.
Yeah.
Right.
And even then, everything is mostly in fairly large rectangles, so it's not too hard to figure out.
Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, it's not super fast-paced. Like, you know, we're not talking Revenge of Shinobi levels here, but this is definitely something that probably wouldn't have actually looked all that good on an original Game Boy screen. Like, plugging into a Super Game Boy, sure. But I'm like, here's the thing. Like,
again, the Super Game Boy actually allowed a little bit more color than this.
Right. If you took advantage of the Super Game Boy. It's like... Right. This looks like a Game Boy, you know, like it was a standard Game Boy into the Super Game Boy. Like, you know, there was some basic functionality there with the colors. And I suppose we should, like, Petty Fang just got to the biggest modern twist to Dogurai here. It's got
if you attack an enemy right as the enemy is attacking you, disclaimer, it does not work for all types of attacks. Most noticeable on shielded enemies and bosses.
Mm-hmm.
You will enter into a little quick time segment where you have to push the D-pad in, or stick, I guess, in directions in order to do cutscene damage to them, basically.
Right. And yeah, that is so not a thing that was ever a part of, you know, any sort of action in the 16-bit era.
I'm pretty sure Game Boy would have blown up just by trying to do that.
Yeah, I'm like unless it was an FMV game on the Sega CD.
Again, the sprite size might be a little questionable, but otherwise the aesthetics are still very Game Boyish.
Yeah, and it nails that pretty well. Like all
and
things
you do
considered.
in fact only have 2 buttons, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, 2 buttons and pause.
Yeah. Yeah. You can only jump and swing your sword, and
you can double jump.
Well, you can also slide.
Yeah.
You can slide, but it's the Mega Man. It's the Mega Man down jump slide.
On PS4, it's its own button.
Oh, well, maybe they have that mappable. On the PC, it's default, at least default mapped to down jump.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like the PS4 version is enhanced, so that's probably a better version.
Worth noting that this game is on the PC, on the PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. Not sure why there's no Xbox One version. It's like, I suppose the thing that surprised me is not what was there, but what wasn't there. There's no kind of shuriken throw.
Well, again, you're a samurai, not a ninja. Even if you're basically the Samurai Jack kind of samurai, where you're not like armored. You do a lot of fast stuff still, but shuriken is a ninja thing.
It's a showcase of how simple this game really is. Like, you only, you jump, you slide, you slice. That's it. Like, that's, that is the controls you would get on an original Game Boy. Like, having a throwing object, that would have been like up and the action button.
Maybe select to switch to it.
Mm-hmm. And which would have been super awkward on an original Game Boy, so that's why it's not here. Even though if this were like aping an 8 or especially a 16-bit action game, it would have throwing, it would have magic, it would have a lot more accoutrements.
Yeah, but again, Game Boy, it's reasonable that it would be kind of minimal. It would be interesting if you had like a couple of sub weapons and you could swap between them with select and up and use to use them. But honestly, as it is, it's pretty much fine.
Yeah,
and it's pretty generous. You can cut through like most attacks, I think, most projectiles.
Yeah, and once again, going back to that weird ninja vibe, you can slice projectiles. If you time it correctly.
I'd make a Samurai Jack Russell Terrier joke, but I think he's really more of a beagle. Seeing as how, as you can see on the Super Game Boy overlay for this, he looks rather like Gromit from Wallace and Gromit or something.
He reminds me of Snoopy, personally.
Snoopy's a little bit rounder, but yeah.
Well, Snoopy is also a beagle, so...
Right. Again, a cartoon beagle, not actually like an actual beagle.
Obviously. And, yeah, in terms of, actual gameplay and design, this is pretty simple. Not easy, as you can see, but in keeping with Game Boy aesthetics.
And it doesn't penalize you super harshly when you die.
Well, and there's also an infinite lives option for those of us who aren't good.
Mm-hmm.
Right. In terms of the actual levels, honestly, I think they're a bit too long for a Game Boy action.
Especially with semi-challenging bosses at the end.
Mm-hmm. You got to remember, portable design has to be super economical because, batteries.
Although the Game Boy lasted quite a while at least, so.
Especially with modern batteries.
It's not like a Game Gear game where your stages had better be less than half an hour or you're just going to have your system die on you. I'm kidding.
Right, but,
also, no one's proposing half-hour stages, thank God.
It's just, portable design tends to be, bite-sized because not just battery life, but, you're not expected to be playing a Game Boy for hours upon hours on end. I know it didn't end up that way, as many hours of Tetris will attest to. But it's like, it's the original. You're playing this for like 5-10 minutes kind of deal. Now, mind you, this game would also cost a bit more because it would have had like a battery save or password, like really awkward. It would have been one of those really awful password systems where it's fucking 4 lines long, all this random stuff, and you mix up the O's and the zeros. It's like, or the I's and the small lowercase L's,
or both.
I encountered all that shit.
I think we all have at some point.
Only if you're a certain age.
Yeah.
Only if you're a certain age. I mean, password systems like that haven't been used since about the Game Boy Advance era.
As soon as well, the reason for passwords is for games that literally have absolutely no way of saving your state.
Right.
So you could save your progress in a game that literally has no inherent way to do that. As soon as they came up with the ability to actually save stuff, passwords became way less common.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as the game itself, I think there's about 6 levels?
Something like that.
No. Yeah, it's not super long in terms of its actual content. As once again,
there's an intro level, then 4 levels off from that, and then I assume at least 1 like final boss level.
Right. It's like I'm not sure if they're counting like the final level as like one long level or whatever. It's like, once again, it could have many segments, but it's still the same level. Think Wily from Mega Man.
Mm-hmm.
It's like versus like Sigma. Like the Sigma stages were all their own stages because you could take a break between them. But Wily stages, they're all.
Until some of the later Mega Man games, at least.
Yeah, it's like, I'll admit I did not get to the final stage here because this game is.
It's hard, but it's mostly the good kind of hard.
Right. Smooth and it's
where you actually like feel where it's like stuff that's difficult to execute, and you learn it, and then you feel good when you execute it, but it's like predictable and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not hard because it throws random big piles of enemies at you, and you have to like psychically determine which way you need to attack.
This has really good combats, really good challenge. Like, if this were an actual Game Boy game, it would probably be like ranked as one of the greatest Game Boy games ever.
Especially Game Boy platformers, because Game Boy platformers, a lot of them were sequels to NES platformers, and a lot of them thus had the a very certain specific problem involving crunching and screen size.
Right.
And man, we shrunk Mega Man by like 2 pixels, and he still takes up like an eighth of the screen.
And now I can just stretch the frame if I want to.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Dogurai here is properly sized for a actual Game Boy game.
The character's only a few. Well, I think he's like 10 pixels tall, but still.
Yeah. Like, if you put this on a real Game Boy screen, it would have been fine in terms of pixel size.
Yeah, I think the screen, I think, is actually a little bit bigger than a Game Boy
Yeah.
screen, but like drastically. And again, remember, the important thing about nostalgia isn't making things be the way they are. It's making things be the way they feel like they were.
Yeah. I mean, once again, it's like you can excise the shitty bits of past gaming. Like, in terms of NES games, nobody wants the fucking sprite flicker. It's like, that was awful and it was terrible, and I hated it even back in the day.
Mega Man 9 and 10 still had the option.
I know. I hate it. It's like they can go fuck right off. It's like, it's one of the things I so enjoyed about the 16-bit era going forward. It's like, no, sprite flicker was awful. And yeah, Game Boy games on an actual Game Boy screen tend to be awful because of that. It's like that screen was a cheap screen, but that had its downsides.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Well, sprite flicker was a really interesting phenomenon because it's usually a sign of the game makers figuring out a way to kind of make something work, even though it technically exceeds the system specs.
right, but we're not talking about screen flicker. We're talking about ghosting and really the Game Boy's weak processor. Like, I'm not sure a game this fast would have actually worked on an original Game Boy.
Oh no, the Z80 would have just fucking shit itself.
You know, yeah, it's
I mean, Mario Land wasn't too slow, but it also was not this fast.
yeah. There was a reason why the Game Boy's bread and butter were more puzzle games.
Puzzles are
Like,
RPGs.
yeah, and their platform.
RPGs, puzzle platformers, RPG platformers.
Yeah, their platformers tended to be slower stuff.
Uh-huh.
You know, like even Mario was kind of sluggish compared to his console counterpart. That's not necessarily bad. It's just that was the game limitations of the Game Boy. You know, the Game Boy was not a tour de force of handheld gaming, even when it released. You know, you stack this up not just against the Game Gear, but the fucking Lynx, which released the same year, and the Lynx was
the Game Boy. The thing the Game Boy was good at was being cheap and lasting a long time.
Yeah, and having really good games that worked on the system.
Yeah,
you know, like people will drag the original Super Mario Land. It's like if you put it in a modern perspective, it doesn't hold up. But for a 1989 launch title for the Game Boy, it's fine. It's perfectly fucking fine.
Mm-hmm.
Even Nintendo took a while to come to grips with the Game Boy technology. Yeah, Super Mario Land 2 is like one of the biggest leaps I've ever seen for a sequel. But that came like 3 years or so in the Game Boy's life. Like, Dogurai, if it were an actual Game Boy game, this is the kind of game we would have been getting in, say, 1994 or 1995. It's like definitely towards the end of the Game Boy's life cycle, or maybe even something that was released during the Game Boy Color's heyday. It's like, admittedly, this is all guesstimations because, we're not super familiar with the actual technical specs of the Game Boy. And,
yeah, ask someone who they're professionals for that. Ask them.
I have to wonder if there are, because Game Boy gaming is one of the least explored vestiges of retro gaming.
Yeah, why make a Game Boy game when you can make a Super Nintendo game?
Well, yeah, it's also Game Boy games had there was a disposability on them that weren't on console games. Watch a lot of Game Boy works and you'll pick this shit up. And yeah, so it's really nice to see somebody invoking this particular corner of retro gaming. It's it's fresh in my mind because, oh good God, we get all sorts of games that are emulating the NES, the Super NES, the Genesis.
Yeah, we've had like one other game that more or less went for Game Boy.
Yeah.
In, I think, Warlock's Tower, and that was not quite as faithful as this one, if I recall correctly, in its control scheme.
Yeah, so it's really nice that someone is doing this and doing this well. Like, and it's also pretty cheap too. This game will only cost you $5, no matter what the platform. Like, easy fucking recommendation at that price. And as far as a game on its own, solid 7. I mean, once again, it's not going to occupy a lot of your time. But for what it's going for for what it's emulating, it's rock solid. Definitely one of the biggest surprises in terms of a game this year for me. What about you guys? What are your final thoughts on Dogurai?
It's
Didn't
pretty
put in
good.
I didn't put in as much time as I think you did, but it's definitely feels good to play, even though it is hard, and it's fun, and I think it does a really good job of capturing the aesthetic that it's going for without, making it crappy like some Game Boy games were.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was kind of the other thing. A lot of developers didn't give a shit about making a good game because you were shitting out a licensed game for kids. They won't tell the difference.
Or rather, the parents won't tell the difference, and the kids will just complain, and the parents will say, "But I got you, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game. Mom, I wanted the one on the Super Nintendo."
I have a feeling that was based in reality.
Thankfully, no, because we didn't get a Game Boy until late enough, and we never had an NES and an SNES at the same time. But I've definitely known parents who are like that.
Right. Oh, I played shitty fucking licensed Game Boy games. I'm looking at you, fucking Amazing Spider-Man. Good God.
And now we go into reliving trauma.
I've ever fucking played. Like, honestly, that game doesn't get enough hate. I think just because Game Boy games aren't that fucking played. But I mean, it is fucking awful. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so yeah, that's our review of Dogurai. That is our review session. That is it for the season in terms of reviews. So coming up on the week ahead, we've got our season finale. On May 27th, we'll be having Dan Clark of Moonray Studios. We will be talking about a game called Title Shock, which is an underwater arena shooter with a shocking twist. 8 players battle in classic Respawn arenas to capture the reactor and boil the competition.
To double check, Tidal Shock.
Title Shock.
As in shock involving the tides.
TIDALSHOCK.
Okay. I originally misheard it as Title Shot, which is a very different thing. But yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. All right. So until Wednesday, I shall wish you good games.
Mm-hmm.